"Stop that forbidden act," the nun cried. But the mountain man didn't, and the town went mad. The mountain town of Gray Hollow had always been quiet. Nestled in a deep valley, surrounded by high, dark green peaks, it was a place where everyone knew everyone, and life moved slowly. The townspeople woke early to the sound of church bells, worked hard during the day, and gathered in the evenings to share stories or play music around warm fires. It was a simple life, one that had continued for generations, untouched by the noise and hurry of the world beyond the mountains. But one day, the peace of Gray Hollow was quietly disturbed. It started when a man appeared on the outskirts of town. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with hair as wild as the forest itself, and eyes that seemed to have seen far more than any townsman could imagine. He carried a rough pack on his back, and his clothes were patched from years of living outdoors. Children who spotted him running down the trail toward the town square would hide behind trees, whispering to each other about the mountain man. The adults, too, watched from their porches and shop windows, unsure whether to feel curiosity, fear, or suspicion. No one knew where he had come from. Some said he had been living alone in the mountains for years, surviving on what the forest offered, while others whispered that he had fled from somewhere he didn't want anyone to find. But he didn't speak much, and when he did, it was in a low, calm voice that made people uncomfortable. His presence felt like a ripple through the town, something that unsettled the familiar rhythm of their lives. The first person to confront him was Sister Agnes. She had lived in Gray Hollow all her life and was known for her kindness, patience, and deep sense of responsibility. Her small, neat habit reflected the orderliness of her mind, and her gentle voice usually calmed any argument or disagreement. But when she first saw the mountain man, something about him made her heart race with unease. There was a freedom in his eyes, she realized, a wildness that defied the rules she had been taught to uphold. She approached him one morning, walking along the cobblestone street that led to the town center. The sun was barely above the mountains, casting golden light on the rooftops and making the mist in the valley glow softly. "Good morning," she said politely, though her voice trembled slightly. "You are new here." "My name is Sister Agnes. May I ask where you are staying?" The mountain man looked at her, his gaze steady, and nodded slowly. "I do not stay long," he said simply. His voice was quiet but strong, like the wind rustling through pine trees. He didn't explain where he came from or why he had come to Gray Hollow, and Sister Agnes felt a chill as she realized that he would not be easily persuaded to follow the town's rules. Over the next few days, the townspeople began noticing small, unusual things about him. He would move silently along the trails before sunrise, seemingly at one with the forest. He brought wild herbs, strange fruits, and unusual stones into the town, displaying them in a small clearing near the square. People whispered that he was performing strange rituals, though no one had actually seen him do anything wrong. Children were both fascinated and frightened, keeping a careful distance while stealing glances at him from behind fences. Sister Agnes grew more concerned. She had been taught to guide and protect the people of Gray Hollow, and the mountain man's behavior felt like a challenge to everything she valued. One afternoon, she followed him to the clearing, hoping to speak to him privately. The air was cool and smelled of pine, and the distant sound of a creek gurgling through the rocks added a peaceful note to the strange tension she felt. "Sir," she began carefully, choosing her words, "I must ask you to follow the ways of our town. There are rules and traditions here that help keep us safe and happy. Your actions, they do not fit with what we believe. Please, listen to me." The mountain man turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "I do not wish to harm anyone," he said softly. "I only live as I must." Sister Agnes felt a pang of frustration. His words were polite, but there was a quiet strength in them that made it clear he would not change. She looked at the people watching from the edge of the clearing. A few women with baskets of laundry, a man with a plow resting on his shoulder, and realized that this confrontation was not just between her and the mountain man. It was between the unknown and the familiar, between freedom and order. The days went on, and more townspeople began to notice him. The blacksmith's daughter, curious and brave, tried to speak with him, offering him bread and milk. He accepted without a word of thanks, nodding slightly, and continued on his way. A few older men shook their heads, muttering about how the town should stand together against outsiders, but no one could deny that there was something compelling about the mountain man. He moved with the rhythm of the mountains themselves, unhurried, observing, patient, as if he were part of a world that the townspeople had long forgotten. Despite her worries, Sister Agnes could not ignore a strange feeling in her chest. There was something noble in his independence, something that reminded her of the courage required to live a life without compromise. Yet she could not shake her fear that his disregard for rules might one day lead to chaos. Gray Hollow had always been safe because people respected the town, the church, and each other, and now she realized with a growing sense of foreboding that safety might be fragile. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Sister Agnes walked through the square again. The mountain man was sitting on a large stone, staring at the horizon. She approached him cautiously, her shadow stretching long across the cobblestones. "Please," she said quietly, "do not do anything that would bring trouble to this town. We have lived here peacefully for many years. Your presence, it is unsettling people." He looked at her, calm and steady. "I only live my life," he said simply. "I do not seek to trouble anyone." Sister Agnes sighed, feeling both frustration and admiration. There was no arguing with him, no forcing him to conform. And yet she could not simply let him go unnoticed. Her duty to the town weighed heavily on her heart. As night fell and the stars began to appear one by one, the mountain man disappeared into the trees, leaving Sister Agnes alone in the square. She stood there for a long moment, listening to the quiet whispers of the wind through the valley, wondering what would happen next. Gray Hollow had always been predictable, safe, and orderly. But now, with the mountain man in their midst, the town's peaceful life had been touched by something wild, something unknown. And no one, not even Sister Agnes, could say what would come of it. The children went to bed that night whispering about the man in the mountains, while adults debated quietly in their homes. Some were angry, some curious, and some, surprisingly, were inspired by the courage it took to live as he did. For the first time in a long while, Gray Hollow felt a strange mixture of fear and fascination. And in the heart of it all, Sister Agnes lay awake, praying that the town would remain strong, yet secretly wondering if the mountain man might change them all in ways they could not imagine. The days following the mountain man's arrival were unlike anything Gray Hollow had experienced in years. At first, the townspeople tried to ignore him, telling themselves that he was harmless and that the mountains often brought travelers and wanderers. But soon they began noticing that his actions were unusual in ways they could not explain. He moved through the town with quiet purpose, carrying bundles of sticks, stones, and plants that no one had ever seen before. He built small structures at the edge of the forest, careful, deliberate, and yet clearly meant to be noticed. Children were the first to talk about it. "Look at him," they would whisper, pointing at the clearing where he worked. "What is he doing?" Some were fascinated, and some were frightened, but all were curious. They would watch him from behind trees and fences, trying to see what he was making. Sometimes he would stop, look toward them, and smile faintly, and the children would scurry away, hearts pounding with excitement and fear. The adults, however, felt a different emotion: worry. Many had grown up in Gray Hollow, a town that valued order, tradition, and respect for the rules of the church. Anything that broke the usual patterns of life felt dangerous. They whispered among themselves in market stalls, by the well, and outside the blacksmith's shop. "He is doing something we cannot understand," one woman said. "Perhaps it is harmless, but what if it is not?" She had watched him closely and noticed that his actions, while seemingly simple, had a rhythm and meaning that she could not decipher. She approached him one afternoon while he was arranging stones in a circle near the edge of the forest. The stones were smooth and dark, placed with precision, and small flowers had been planted between them. It looked beautiful, almost like an art form, but Sister Agnes felt a chill. "Sir," she said gently, keeping her voice calm, "I do not understand what you are doing here. These things, these arrangements, they worry the people of Gray Hollow. Please, tell me why you are doing this." The mountain man paused and looked at her with calm eyes. "I am only living," he said simply. "I take what the land gives me, and I make something from it. I do no harm. It may seem harmless to you, but to us, it is strange. People do not understand it. They think it is forbidden." He shrugged slightly. "Then perhaps they need to learn." Her heart sank. He was not going to stop, no matter how much she begged, and she realized with growing fear that his refusal to conform could bring unrest to the town. Over the next few days, his activities grew bolder. He began walking into the town square, carrying bundles of herbs and wildflowers, arranging them in patterns that looked like small mazes or symbols. People stared at him, murmuring to each other. Some thought he was practicing an old, forgotten tradition, while others felt it was disrespectful to the town's customs. One morning, as the sun rose behind the mountains, Sister Agnes found him kneeling in the square, carefully placing bright flowers around a small stone he had set upright. "Stop that," she cried suddenly, unable to hold her fear any longer. "This is a forbidden act. You must not do this here." The mountain man looked up at her, calm and steady. "I am not harming anyone," he said softly. "I only live my life. You must listen. The town, the people, they cannot understand this. They will fear you. They will think you are dangerous." But the mountain man did not move. He did not argue, nor did he retreat. He simply continued arranging the flowers, placing each one with care, as if every movement mattered more than the world around him. News of the confrontation spread quickly. By midday, people had gathered around the square, peeking from doorways and windows. Some whispered in worry, others in excitement. The town, which had been quiet and predictable, now buzzed with tension. Children pressed their noses against the glass of shop windows, and shopkeepers paused in their work to watch. Even the mayor, a stern man who valued order above all else, came to see what was happening. "Why is he doing this?" the mayor asked one of the townspeople. "This is not the way we live."
"He says he means no harm," the man replied, shrugging.
"But look at the people. They are scared." Sister Agnes stepped forward, her hands clasped tightly together. "Please," she said, looking at the mountain man, "you must stop. The town cannot accept this. It is not in our ways." He shook his head gently. "I cannot. I do not wish to stop. I only follow the life I know." The mayor sighed, frustrated. "Then we must decide what to do. This cannot continue. People cannot live in fear of someone simply because they are different." That evening, the town held a quiet meeting in the community hall. The air was tense. filled with murmurs of fear and concern. Some townspeople argued that the mountain man should be forced to leave. Others suggested ignoring him and hoping he would go away on his own. A few, surprisingly, argued that his presence was not harmful and that perhaps the town could learn from him. Sister Agnes listened silently, her mind torn. She understood the fear of the people, but she could not help feeling a strange respect for the mountain man. He lived simply, with honesty and courage, following his own path. It was a path the town had forgotten, a path free of pretense and fear. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley, the mountain man continued his work in the square. He moved with quiet purpose, each gesture deliberate and calm. Flowers were placed, stones were arranged, and a small pattern of harmony began to emerge on the ground. To the mountain man, it was just life. To the townspeople, it was something they could neither understand nor control. The next morning, children ran to the square to watch him again. Some tried to mimic his careful arrangements, and he smiled faintly at them, though he said nothing. Sister Agnes watched from a distance, her heart heavy. She realized that the mountain man's refusal to conform was changing the town in ways no one could predict. People were starting to question their own lives, their routines, their ideas of what was acceptable. In the days that followed, more townspeople approached him cautiously. Some brought him food or small gifts, trying to connect with him. Others avoided him, whispering warnings to their neighbors. Gray Hollow had never experienced such a mix of fear, curiosity, and fascination. The mountain man had become more than a person. He had become a symbol of freedom, of defiance, and of the unknown. Sister Agnes knew that the situation could not continue indefinitely. She prayed each night, asking for guidance and wisdom. How could she protect the town, yet also respect the mountain man's life? How could she keep peace without forcing someone to betray their own way of living? One evening, as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, she approached the mountain man once more. The square was empty now, quiet except for the soft whisper of the wind through the mountains. He looked up from his work and met her gaze. "I cannot stop," he said softly, as if he had been reading her thoughts. "I only live as I must. If that is not what you understand, then perhaps you will come to see it in time." Sister Agnes nodded slowly, feeling a mix of frustration, fear, and awe. She realized that the mountain man's presence had begun a change in Gray Hollow, a slow, subtle shift that might lead to conflict or perhaps to understanding. She did not know which, but she knew that the town could not go back to the way it had been. As she walked home that night, the lights of Gray Hollow twinkling in the valley below, she wondered what the coming days would bring. The mountain man's act, simple as it seemed, had stirred the hearts and minds of the townspeople, and deep inside she could not help but feel that perhaps some good might come from it, if only the town could survive its fear long enough to see it. The town of Gray Hollow had changed. What had begun as curiosity about the mountain man had slowly grown into something heavier, a sense of unease that lingered over every street, every home, and every conversation. People whispered in corners, exchanging worried glances, and some avoided looking at the clearing where the mountain man worked. Even children, who had once watched him with fascination, now approached cautiously, their excitement mixed with a strange fear. Sister Agnes felt the tension deeply. Each morning she walked through the square, observing the mountain man as he moved with quiet purpose. He did not speak much, and when he did, his words were calm, almost soothing, yet firm in their refusal to bend to the town's rules. She wanted to stop him, to make him understand the worry he caused, but each confrontation seemed to strengthen his resolve rather than weaken it. It was during one chilly morning that the first serious disagreement happened. The blacksmith, a stout man named Harold, approached the mountain man with visible anger. "You can't just come here and do as you please," he shouted. "This is our town, not the mountains." The mountain man looked at him, his eyes steady and unafraid. "I do no harm," he said softly. "I live quietly, and I follow the life I know." "Quietly?" Harold repeated, his voice rising. "People are afraid. Children are afraid. Women are afraid. And yet you refuse to listen?" Sister Agnes stepped forward, placing her hand lightly on Harold's arm. "Please, calm yourself," she said gently. "He does not intend harm. Perhaps we should try to understand him rather than fight him." Harold shook his head. "Understanding? How can we understand someone who ignores our customs, our faith, and our way of life?" The mountain man said nothing further. He returned to arranging his stones and flowers, calm in the face of anger. His silence, however, seemed to make Harold even more frustrated. By midday, the whispers had spread throughout Gray Hollow. Families argued in their homes about what should be done. Some felt the mountain man should be forced to leave, while others argued that he had done nothing wrong and that fear was controlling their judgment. Sister Agnes listened to these arguments with a heavy heart. She understood both sides, but the conflict was growing in a way she could not control. The children, meanwhile, remained captivated. A few brave souls would sneak out to the clearing to watch him, and sometimes he would allow them to help arrange stones or plant flowers. Their laughter and excitement were a small light amid the growing tension. But even they noticed the wary eyes of adults watching from windows and doorways, and they learned quickly that curiosity in Gray Hollow was now a dangerous thing. One evening, as the sun began to sink behind the mountains and the sky turned soft shades of orange and purple, Sister Agnes walked through the town with a deep sense of worry. She could feel the fear and uncertainty in the air, and she knew it would only grow if the mountain man continued his quiet defiance. She reached the clearing and saw him arranging stones again, his movements calm and deliberate. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "please, you must see what this is doing to the town. People are frightened. Families are arguing. Even the mayor is worried that your presence may divide us." The mountain man paused and looked up. His eyes were steady and kind. "I do not wish to divide," he said softly. "I only live as I must. If that brings fear, then it is not my doing but theirs. I cannot live a life that is not mine." Sister Agnes felt a mix of frustration and admiration. His words were true. He did not see conflict, and yet the town was unraveling slowly because they could not understand someone so different from themselves. The next day, the tension reached a breaking point. A group of townspeople gathered near the clearing, led by Harold and a few other men. They wanted to confront the mountain man, to force him to stop or leave. Sister Agnes tried to speak to them, pleading for patience and understanding. "He has harmed no one," she said. "We must not let fear control our hearts." "No," Harold shouted. "We cannot risk our town being unsettled. We must act." The mountain man stepped forward, calm as ever. He raised his hands slightly, not in anger, but in peace. "I do not seek conflict," he said. "I only live my life quietly and with respect for the world around me." Some were angered by his refusal to obey. Others were unsure, sensing that his courage and calmness were not weaknesses, but something powerful. The standoff lasted hours, with no words exchanged, only the quiet strength of the mountain man against the tension of the crowd. Meanwhile, in the homes of Gray Hollow, people debated furiously. Mothers worried about their children, fathers worried about the town's reputation. Children whispered about the bravery of the mountain man and wondered why adults were so afraid. Sister Agnes moved among them, trying to calm fears, explain, and bring understanding, but the divisions were growing. By evening, the group dispersed, though not without tension lingering in the air. The mountain man remained in the square, arranging flowers and stones, as if the events of the day had not occurred. His calmness was both a comfort and a challenge to the townspeople. How could one person remain so peaceful when the whole town seemed ready to explode with fear and anger? Over the following days, the town fell into a state of quiet chaos. Arguments became more frequent. Shopkeepers refused to speak to those who opposed their views. Families split over the question of what should be done with the mountain man. The mayor tried to mediate, calling meetings and offering suggestions, but no solution seemed acceptable. Gray Hollow had always been orderly, and now it felt as though the ground beneath them was shifting. Sister Agnes found herself questioning everything she had believed. She had always trusted the order and wisdom of the town and the teachings of her faith. Yet here was a man, silent, calm, and unyielding, who showed her that life could be lived differently, honestly, freely, and without fear. She did not always understand him, but she could not deny that he had awakened something in the hearts of the townspeople. One night, as the stars shone bright over Gray Hollow, the mountain man sat quietly in the square. Sister Agnes approached and sat beside him on a low stone. The air was cold, and the soft rustle of the trees created a peaceful soundtrack. "You have caused fear," she said softly. "Some are angry, and some are confused. But I cannot deny that you have also made people think about themselves, about their lives."
He nodded slowly. Fear is natural.
Change is difficult, but life cannot be lived only for the approval of others. We must live as we are meant to. Sister Agnes sighed, looking at the arrangement of flowers and stones around them. "You are brave," she said quietly. "Perhaps too brave for this town, but perhaps too brave is exactly what we need." The mountain man smiled faintly, returning to his work. "I do not seek to be brave," he said. "I only seek to live." That night, as the wind whispered through the mountains, Gray Hollow slept uneasily. The town was divided. Some feared the mountain man, some admired him, and some, like Sister Agnes, were caught between worry and wonder. One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same. The mountain man had shown them a different way of seeing the world, and the town had begun to change, whether they were ready or not. The days in Gray Hollow grew tense and heavy, as if the very air had become thick with worry. The town that had once been peaceful, where neighbors greeted each other with smiles and children ran freely through the streets, now felt like a place on the edge of unrest. Every glance toward the clearing where the mountain man worked seemed to carry weight, as though the townspeople feared what he might do next. It began one bright morning with a group of men gathering near the town square. Harold, the blacksmith, had called them together. They spoke in low, urgent voices, their faces lined with worry and anger. "We cannot allow this to continue," Harold said. "Every day he stays, every action he takes, it shakes the town. People are scared. Families are arguing. This is not how we live." "But what has he truly done wrong?" one of the men asked quietly. "He harms no one, and yet you speak as if he is a danger." "Danger? Fear itself is dangerous, and soon, if this continues, it will turn to chaos." Sister Agnes, who had overheard the conversation, approached them gently. Her hands were folded in front of her, her voice calm but firm. "Please, think carefully. He has harmed no one. Forcing him to leave or stopping him by anger or threat will only make matters worse. We must find understanding, not conflict." But the men were resolute. Fear had taken root in their hearts, and reasoning seemed almost impossible. They left the meeting with tense faces, walking silently toward the clearing. That afternoon, the mountain man went about his usual work. He moved slowly, arranging stones and planting flowers, his actions deliberate, full of a quiet purpose. He did not seem to notice the approaching crowd until it was almost upon him. The men stood a few steps away, watching him closely. The children, hiding behind fences and trees, peeked at the scene, holding their breath. Harold stepped forward. "Stop what you are doing," he commanded. "You cannot continue like this. The town cannot accept it." The mountain man looked up slowly, meeting Harold's gaze. "I do not wish to cause harm," he said calmly. "I only live as I must." Living as you must? People are frightened. They argue. Families are torn. "This is not acceptable." The mountain man did not move or reply further. His calmness, rather than deflating the anger of the men, seemed to intensify it. They began to shout, their voices echoing in the square, and soon more townspeople had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Mothers clutched their children, men exchanged worried glances, and whispers of fear and suspicion filled the air. Sister Agnes pushed through the crowd. "Please stop," she cried. "This will not solve anything. Violence, anger, or fear cannot control truth or freedom." But the crowd was caught in the tide of its own panic. Some shouted that the mountain man should be forced to leave. Others demanded that he stop his strange acts immediately. The more they shouted, the more unsettled the town became. Even the mayor arrived, his usual calm demeanor replaced with concern. "Everyone, listen," he said. "We cannot allow fear to guide us. We must act with reason." Despite his words, tension had already taken hold. People were divided. Some wanted to defend the mountain man, insisting he had harmed no one. Others were too frightened to care about fairness. All they knew was that the unknown, the unfamiliar, threatened their sense of security. Gray Hollow was caught between respect for the mountain man's freedom and the desire for the safety of the familiar. As the sun sank low behind the mountains, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the crowd's voices had risen to a roar. The mountain man stood silently, placing one last flower, carefully, in a small circle. He said nothing, his expression calm, his actions deliberate. His refusal to fight, his refusal to conform, was almost more challenging than any argument or threat. In the growing chaos, something unexpected happened. A young girl stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. She was small, barely 10 years old, with bright eyes that reflected courage beyond her years. "He has done nothing wrong. He is just living." Her voice, pure and determined, cut through the shouting. People paused, surprised by the innocence and clarity of her words. Harold scowled, annoyed by her defiance, but the mayor raised a hand, calling for silence. The crowd began to quiet, listening to the small voice that spoke truth in a way they had forgotten. Sister Agnes approached the girl and nodded, her heart lifting slightly. She could see that even in fear, courage could shine, and sometimes it came from the most unexpected places. The mountain man finally spoke, addressing the crowd with calm authority. "I do not wish to harm or frighten anyone," he said softly. "I live quietly, in the way I know. If my actions cause fear, it is not because I wish it, but because fear is a part of the unknown. I cannot change who I am to satisfy fear." His words, though simple, had weight. The town fell silent. For a moment, it seemed that time itself had paused. People looked at each other, some with shame for their fear, others with wonder at his courage. Sister Agnes felt a strange mixture of relief and awe. Still, the tension did not disappear completely. Families returned to their homes, speaking in hushed tones about what had happened. Some were inspired, wondering if the mountain man's calm and honesty could teach them something. Others were still uneasy, their fear lingering like a shadow over the town. That night, Gray Hollow felt quieter than it had in days. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and flowers from the clearing. The mountain man sat alone, arranging stones and flowers by the light of the moon. Sister Agnes joined him, sitting silently for a moment before speaking. "You are strong," she said quietly, "perhaps stronger than anyone here realizes. You have faced fear and anger with calm, and you have not wavered." He looked at her, his eyes reflecting the soft moonlight. "I do not seek strength," he said. "I only seek to live honestly. Strength comes only from being true to oneself." Sister Agnes nodded, understanding more than she could express. She realized that his courage was not in defying the town, but in staying true to himself, despite fear and misunderstanding. In the days that followed, the town began to adjust. The fear did not vanish completely, but it became less intense. People started to watch the mountain man not just with suspicion, but with curiosity and even quiet respect. Children continued to play near the clearing, sometimes helping him with small tasks. Adults began to recognize the power of calm and honesty. Though their fears were slow to fade, Sister Agnes continued her quiet work among the townspeople, teaching patience, understanding, and the value of seeing beyond fear. She knew the change would take time, but she also knew that the mountain man had already left an impression that would last for generations. The mountain man remained in Gray Hollow, living quietly in his own way, continuing his small acts of creation and observation. Though he never sought to influence or teach, his presence challenged the town to see the world differently. People began to ask themselves questions they had never considered. What is truly important? How much of our fear is real, and how much is imagined? How can we live honestly, even when others do not understand us? Gray Hollow had reached a breaking point, but instead of destroying the town, it had begun to awaken it. The mountain man's quiet defiance had sparked a reflection in the hearts of the people, a challenge to their assumptions, and a call to face their fears. And though the town remained uneasy, it had also begun a journey toward understanding, a journey that would not be easy, but one that was necessary. As night fell and the mountains cast long shadows over Gray Hollow, the town slept with a sense of quiet tension and new awareness. The mountain man continued his work, and Sister Agnes watched over the town, her heart full of hope and uncertainty. Change had come, and there was no turning back. Gray Hollow would never be the same. The days grew quieter in Gray Hollow, but the town was far from the same place it had been before the mountain man arrived. People still whispered about him, but the fear that had once filled the air had softened into curiosity, respect. Families talked more thoughtfully, neighbors spoke with care, and children often wandered to the clearing to see what new arrangement of stones or flowers awaited them. Sister Agnes watched these changes with a mixture of relief and wonder. She had been through many challenges in her life, guiding the town and helping it maintain order, but nothing had ever tested her patience and understanding like the mountain man. His calmness, honesty, and refusal to follow the usual rules had unsettled Gray Hollow, but in the process, he had also opened hearts and minds that had long been rigid and fearful. One crisp morning, the mountain man did something unexpected. He gathered his stones and flowers in the clearing and began packing them into a small, rough bag. Children who had been helping him ran to him, their eyes wide.
"Where are you going?" one of them asked. I must leave, he said simply.
His voice was calm, his gaze steady. The town has learned what it needed to learn. I have done what I could. Now it is time for me to continue my journey. The children were silent for a moment, unsure whether to feel sad or inspired. Sister Agnes stepped forward, her heart heavy but understanding. You have done more for Grey Hollow than you may ever know, she said softly. You have taught us courage, honesty, and the value of living true to oneself. You will be remembered here. The mountain man nodded. I am glad if I have helped, he replied. But remember, the lessons are yours to carry. I only show the way, you must walk it yourself. By midday, the townspeople had gathered near the clearing. They were quiet at first, unsure what to say or how to react. Harold the blacksmith stepped forward, his face serious but softened by thought. You leave? He asked. We did not understand you at first, but now I see that perhaps we have much to learn from your example. The mountain man smiled faintly. I never wished to teach. I only wished to live. But if my life has helped others, then it has been worthwhile. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the mountain man walked slowly toward the edge of the forest. Children followed him for a short distance, laughing softly and waving. Adults watched from a distance, some with tears in their eyes, some with smiles of quiet respect. Sister Agnes stayed near the clearing until he disappeared among the trees, her heart filled with a mixture of loss and gratitude. After his departure, Grey Hollow began to change in ways that were both subtle and profound. The town did not return entirely to the way it had been, nor did it need to. People were more thoughtful, more willing to listen, and more patient with each other. Arguments that might once have escalated into anger were now approached with discussion and understanding. Families spent more time together, and children played freely, sharing stories about the mountain man and the lessons they had learned from him. Sister Agnes often walked through the clearing, remembering the quiet strength of the man who had changed so much in so little time. She would kneel among the stones and flowers he had left behind, arranging them carefully and adding small touches of her own. In doing so, she felt connected not only to him, but to the lessons he had taught, that courage was not always loud, that honesty could be more powerful than anger, and that living true to oneself could inspire others without a word. Even the mayor, who had once been frustrated and worried, found himself reflecting on the events. He realized that leadership was not only about enforcing rules, but also about understanding the hearts of the people. He encouraged townspeople to share their thoughts and feelings openly, fostering a new sense of community that was stronger and more resilient than before. Months passed, and the mountain man's story became a quiet legend in Grey Hollow. Parents told their children about the man from the mountains who had shown them the importance of living honestly, calmly, and with courage. Children played games pretending to be the mountain man, arranging stones and flowers in imaginative patterns. The town square, once filled with fear and tension, now held laughter, conversation, and creativity. Sister Agnes, now more reflective than ever, wrote down her experiences with the mountain man. She wanted future generations to understand the lessons he had brought to Grey Hollow. Her writings described not only his actions, but also the emotions he had stirred, the fears he had challenged, and the courage he had inspired. She understood that the story was not just about a man who lived differently, but about a town that learned to grow, to question, and to see beyond fear. One evening, years later, Sister Agnes sat in the square, now filled with children's laughter and the gentle hum of daily life. She looked at the clearing, still marked with stones and small flowers that had grown and spread over time. She smiled softly, remembering the mountain man's calm voice and steadfast ways. Though he had left, his influence remained in every thoughtful conversation, every act of kindness, and every courageous choice made in Gray Hollow. Harold, the blacksmith, walked by and nodded toward the clearing. "I still think about him," he said quietly. "I used to be angry, but now I see that he gave us something more valuable than rules or order. He gave us courage." Sister Agnes nodded in agreement. "Yes," she said, "and he showed us that fear cannot control our lives. Only understanding, patience, and honesty can." The town had not forgotten, and in many ways, it had never been the same. Gray Hollow had faced its fears, questioned its assumptions, and found strength in reflection. The mountain man had been the catalyst, but the change belonged to the people themselves. They had learned to live with curiosity, compassion, and courage, and those lessons would continue for generations. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting a warm golden glow over the valley, Sister Agnes looked at the horizon and whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. The mountain man's presence had been fleeting, but the impact had been lasting. The town had survived its fear, learned from his courage, and grown in ways it could not have imagined. And in that quiet moment, with the wind rustling through the trees and the soft glow of evening settling over Gray Hollow, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that the lessons of the mountain man would live on in the hearts of all who called the town home. Gray Hollow had changed, not because the mountain man had forced it, but because he had inspired it. His calm defiance, his honesty, and his courage had shown that one person, living true to themselves, could awaken a whole community. And though he had gone back to the mountains, his story remained, a story of quiet strength, lasting courage, and the power of living honestly, no matter how different the world may seem.